We're headed toward a shutdown at this point.
Well, looks like the U.S. is facing potential worries over a government shutdown. Again.
President Trump vowing to shut down the government.
The federal government will shut down tonight.
The longest government shutdown in U.S. history.
Time is running out for Congress to pass a spending bill to avoid a government shutdown.
A government shutdown is looming.
Congress is in, unfortunately, a familiar position as it works to avoid another government shutdown.
I would never like to see a shutdown. But if that's where it's going, that's where it's going.
Kevin McCarthy, the Republican Speaker of the House, has met opposition on meeting a government funding deadline by September 30th, not just from Democrats, but from members of his own party.
If Republicans hold Republicans back from moving bills, it's like you're walking into a fight losing. And I've never understood that situation.
Currently, the federal government needs a budget to be approved to fund its operations through October. And right now, McCarthy is unable to find consensus in his party to pass legislation. And it's not just the Speaker that's frustrated. Many House Republicans oppose what the small minority of dissenting members are doing as well, like when a recent defense spending bill failed to pass in the House by just 2 votes, with 5 Republicans voting no.
There's certainly a level of frustration with what some of our colleagues are doing in terms of how they are going about negotiating within the conference. None of us support a shutdown. But in order to do that as a conference, we have to pass appropriations bills.
And not only that, but in the middle of editing this video, a second attempt to push through that legislation just failed to pass. The Republican opposition comes from hardline conservatives who want to see a decrease in federal government spending.
And my folks back home are saying, quit spending this much money.
How many others are there like you?
Ma'am,
who are a no right now in your conference?
There are 7 locked in concrete. I would say there's probably 4 others that are pretty close, and there's a couple other wild cards out there, and it only takes 3.
One of these dissenters is Matt Gaetz, who has consistently been combative toward McCarthy since earlier this year when he helped force Republicans go through 15 rounds of votes to confirm McCarthy as Speaker. McCarthy's inability to unite House Republicans around a spending plan speaks to this rift between moderate and extreme conservatives, and it's being called out by Democrats as a Republican civil war.
Let me tell you my perspective on this. We have made no progress here under Kevin McCarthy, and the roots of this are back in January, where he sold out the American people's interests to gain a speakership from the most extreme members of his party. What we're seeing is as he tries to protect his own job, he is forgetting about the needs of the people who sent him here to govern.
Amid this Republican infighting, a group of nearly 100 moderate Democrats have reached out to McCarthy with an offer to join them in creating a new bipartisan bill to meet the funding deadline with a continuing resolution. A temporary fix that provides a short-term amount of funding to keep the government open.
We want a short-term CR.
However, politically, this could hurt McCarthy's authority in the House among more conservative members who are already frustrated with his leadership. Although some have faith in reaching an agreement,
I feel good. I think we're going to keep government open. I have absolute faith that we're going to do the right thing, and the Democrats are going to join us in doing the right thing.
If a funding bill is not approved by September 30th, the government will experience a partial shutdown. Partial shutdowns do not cease all government operations, but they do cause several issues for government employees and the American public, like delayed funding for FEMA's disaster relief, lack of pay for TSA agents, and closure of government-funded sites like national parks.
But the bottom line is, look, we're sitting here in Washington right now because the Republicans can't even fund the government. They couldn't even pass the bill to pay the troops this week. They couldn't even pass the procedural rule to get to that vote. That's like not striking out in baseball, but simply crashing and burning between the dugout and the batter's box. It didn't even make it to a vote.
We've got some populists over there that are not looking at defense. They're not looking, at the long-term implications of what the costs are for a shutdown. We don't want to see a shutdown. We think that's very bad policy. We've had a long time to work on this. The House should have had their act together already.
Shutting down and harming so many individuals that have nothing to do with it. And all they're going to do is reap the horrendous decision of how it's going to affect their lives. That shouldn't even be on the table. So anybody who's thinking about, I'm just going to be so adamant about my position that we're going to shut everything down.
We have made no progress here under Kevin McCarthy. And the roots of this are back in January, where he sold out the American people's interests to gain a speakership from the most extreme members of his party. Kevin McCarthy has already made a bipartisan deal. That was done in June, and it is long past time he lives up to that. What we're seeing is as he tries to protect his own job, he is forgetting about the needs of the people who sent him here to govern. So when people call my office, they are concerned about Social Security and veteran benefits. They are concerned about the high cost of living. Kevin McCarthy and the extremists are concerned about keeping Kevin in office. He already came to Democrats. That is the deal we set in June. So all of this is complete nonsense, but it's a dangerous game. Back in June, he made a deal with the President of the United States after taking the economy hostage, catering to these extremists and their agenda of burning government down. And what he did then was totally roll it back. We had 314 bipartisan votes in the House of Representatives for that deal. The answer is right in front of him. But what he is choosing is his own power. And what he is doing to get there is catering to an extreme agenda. It doesn't have to be this way. When Democrats were in charge, we made investments in infrastructure and manufacturing and reducing the costs of insulin and healthcare. We did it with a slim majority. It is time for the Republicans in the GOP to put the people they serve first.
We got to stop lying to the American public. You know, Washington politicians are failing America. President Biden is responsible for this failure. The Senate is responsible for this failure, and House Republicans are responsible for this failure if the government shuts down. I left a meeting where we were talking about top line numbers that we know for sure the Senate isn't going to pass or consider at all. That's like determining what color your bedroom is going to be. Is it going to be red or is it going to be blue when your mortgage is due on Monday? So we're not having serious conversations. It's always somebody else's fault but ours, and it's absolutely dangerous to the American public if we have this shutdown.
We have some new reporting tonight that Speaker McCarthy laid out for you and other members in a meeting tonight, a plan that would keep the government open for 30 days and would do that at levels of $1.47 trillion of spending. It also adds a commission to address the debt and border security in that package. My question to you is, are you on board with this plan?
No, ma'am, I'm not currently. The packages you described, I mean, we take in around $5 trillion a year, and conservative estimates say we're probably going to spend $7 trillion a year. We just passed $33 trillion in debt. And these commissions, they don't have any legislative ability. And if we give them that, are we violating the Constitution by giving somebody authority over ourselves? We've had these bipartisan blue ribbon committees in the past, ma'am. Elections have consequences, and my folks back home are saying, quit spending this much money. And you know, a continued resolution is just that. It's a 30-day fix. And how in the world do the 50 states manage? They pass a budget. I'm sure your family has a budget. My family has a budget. Church or synagogue has a budget. Every charity in the country has a budget, except the United States government. Ma'am, we haven't passed a budget since the 70s.